There is a man sitting alone in the darkness of his room, city lights flickering through his window like distant stars he cannot reach. It is 3 a.m. and he has not slept. His body is exhausted, but his mind refuses to surrender. It replays the conversation from earlier today, dissecting every word he spoke, every gesture he made, searching for the exact moment he failed. He imagines what he should have said instead, crafts the perfect response that will never be delivered, and tortures himself with the knowledge that it is already too late. Then his thoughts shift to tomorrow, to next week, to all the catastrophes that might unfold if he makes the wrong choice, says the wrong thing, takes the wrong path. He is paralyzed not by external enemies, but by the endless civil war inside his own skull. This is the prison of overthinking, and millions of men live inside it every single day. The modern world has convinced us that more thinking equals more intelligence, that the man who analyzes every angle is the wisest man in the room. But the ancient Stoics understood something we have forgotten. They knew that thinking is only valuable when it sharpens your vision or moves you toward action. Beyond that point, thought becomes a weapon you turn against yourself. It becomes the voice that whispers, "You are not ready, not good enough, not certain enough to move forward." It becomes the cage that keeps you safe from failure by keeping you safe from everything, including life itself. Marcus Aurelius stood at the edge of the Roman Empire, commanding armies and navigating the chaos of power. Yet he wrote in his private journals that the greatest battle is not fought on distant fields, but within the fortress of the mind. He understood that overthinking is not wisdom. It is weakness dressed in the costume of caution. The Stoics did not celebrate the man lost in endless contemplation. They honored the man who could see clearly, decide quickly, and act with courage despite uncertainty. Seneca warned that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, that the mind left unchecked will invent 1,000 disasters that never arrive. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by events themselves, but by our endless interpretations of those events. Our relentless need to create narratives and assign meaning to things that require none. The overthinking mind is not a careful mind. It is a fearful mind pretending to be prudent. It mistakes motion for progress, confuses analysis with understanding, and believes that if it can just think a little longer, clarity will magically appear. But clarity does not come from more thinking. It comes from less. Marcus Aurelius knew this truth intimately. He carried the weight of an empire on his shoulders, faced wars and plagues and betrayals, yet he maintained an inner stillness that his enemies could not touch. His secret was not complex philosophy or elaborate ritual. It was a simple discipline of presence. He trained himself to cut through the noise of his mind with a single question: what is within my control right now? Not tomorrow, not next year, not in some imagined future where everything goes wrong. Right now, in this moment, what can I actually influence? The answer is always smaller than the mind wants it to be. You cannot control what others think of you. You cannot control whether your plans succeed or fail. You cannot control the past or bend the future to your will, but you can control your attention. You can control your response. You can control whether you act or remain frozen in the paralysis of perpetual analysis. This is the Stoic cure for overthinking. It is not a medication or a technique. It is a way of seeing. When the mind begins its endless loop of worry and speculation, the Stoic does not fight it. He observes it. He watches his thoughts the way a general watches enemy movements on a distant hill, with detachment and clarity. He asks himself, is this thought helping me or enslaving me? Is this worry preparing me for action or simply draining my strength? If the answer is the latter, he lets the thought pass like a cloud across the sky. He does not argue with it, does not try to suppress it, does not feed it with attention. He simply returns his focus to what is real and immediate. The Stoic understands that most of our suffering is self-inflicted, that we are the authors of our own mental chaos, and therefore we hold the power to end it. Consider the difference between two men facing the same decision. The first man sits and weighs every possible outcome. He lists the pros and cons, imagines every scenario, consults his fears disguised as reason. He waits for absolute certainty, for the perfect moment when risk disappears and success is guaranteed. He waits and waits, and while he waits, the opportunity passes. Life moves forward without him. The second man, trained in Stoic discipline, looks at the situation clearly. He gathers what information he can, acknowledges the uncertainty he cannot eliminate, and then he moves. He acts not because he has eliminated all doubt, but because he understands that waiting for perfect certainty is itself the greatest risk. He knows that action, even imperfect action, creates knowledge that thinking alone never will. He knows that courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to move forward despite it. Overthinking is fear wearing the mask of intelligence. It is the mind's clever way of avoiding the vulnerability that comes with decisive action. When you act, you expose yourself to judgment, to failure, to the possibility that you are wrong. But when you think, you remain safe in the realm of potential. You can preserve your self-image as someone who would have succeeded if only the circumstances were different. If only you had more information, if only the timing were better. The Stoics rejected this comfort. They understood that the man who never risks being wrong will never discover what he is truly capable of. They knew that strength is forged not in the safety of endless deliberation, but in the crucible of committed action. Marcus Aurelius faced this reality every day. He could not afford the luxury of overthinking when barbarians pressed at the borders of Rome. He could not wait for perfect clarity when plague swept through his cities. He had to act, to decide, to lead, even when the path forward was shrouded in uncertainty. And his method was elegantly simple. He trained himself to recognize when his mind was circling in useless patterns. He would stop, breathe, and ask, what if I just acted instead of analyzing? What if I trusted my training, my character, my capacity to adapt, and simply moved forward? This was not recklessness. It was the profound wisdom of knowing that life is not a problem to be solved through endless contemplation, but a series of moments to be met with presence and courage. The weak mind treats every situation as a puzzle that must be completely understood before action can be taken. It demands guarantees that life will never provide. It seeks an escape from uncertainty, from discomfort, from the possibility of making mistakes. But the Stoic mind understands that uncertainty is not the enemy. Inaction is. The Stoic embraces the reality that he will sometimes be wrong, that his plans will not always unfold as hoped, that he will face setbacks and failures, and he acts anyway, because he knows that wisdom comes not from avoiding mistakes, but from learning through engagement with reality. The man trapped in overthinking lives in his head, battling phantoms and hypotheticals. The Stoic lives in the world, adapting to what is, not what might be. There is profound freedom in this approach. When you stop demanding that your mind provide perfect answers before you move, you reclaim the energy that was being wasted on endless internal debate. You discover that most of the scenarios you feared never materialize. You learn that you are more resilient than your anxious thoughts suggested. You find that clarity does not come before action, but through action. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature, which meant accepting the fundamental uncertainty of existence and choosing to participate fully, rather than watching from the sidelines of your own life. Think of the warrior preparing for battle. He does not know every move his opponent will make. He does not have a perfect plan for every possibility, but he has trained his body and sharpened his mind, and when the moment comes, he trusts his preparation and acts. His strength is not in knowing everything, but in being present to whatever unfolds. The same principle applies to every challenge you face. You will never have complete information. You will never eliminate all risk, but you can develop the discipline to act despite uncertainty, to trust in your ability to adapt, to meet each moment as it comes rather than trying to control it from within the prison of your thoughts. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events, and that realizing this is where you find strength. This is the essence of the Stoic cure for overthinking. You cannot control whether your business succeeds, whether people approve of you, whether your plans work out exactly as you hope. But you can control where you place your attention. You can control whether you waste your mental energy on worries that serve no purpose, or whether you channel that energy into meaningful action. You can control whether you remain a prisoner of your own analysis or whether you step into the arena of life with quiet courage. The mind that cannot stop thinking is the mind that cannot truly live. It is caught in an endless loop of preparation, always getting ready but never beginning, always planning but never doing. It mistakes exhaustion for productivity, confuses mental noise for depth. But the Stoic knows that real peace comes not from having all the answers, but from accepting that you never will, and choosing to act anyway. Clarity is not born in the chaos of overthinking. It emerges in the silence between thoughts, in the stillness that comes when you stop arguing with reality and simply respond to it. When you learn to observe your thoughts without being controlled by them, when you train yourself to distinguish between useful reflection and self-torture, when you develop the courage to act before certainty arrives, you become something the overthinking mind can never be. You become free. You become present. You become a man who moves through life with purpose rather than paralysis. The Stoics understood that overthinking is not a sign of intelligence, but a failure of will. It is the mind refusing to accept its own limits, demanding control over things that cannot be controlled, and punishing itself for being human. The cure is not to think less, but to think better. To think with purpose, and then to stop. To gather what wisdom you can from reflection, and then to trust yourself enough to step forward. To recognize when thinking has become a substitute for living, and to choose differently. Marcus Aurelius mastered an empire not by having all the answers, but by being present to each moment. By responding to what was real, rather than what was imagined. By acting with courage despite the uncertainty that surrounded him. This is the path he offers us still. Not a path free of doubt or difficulty, but a path where we are no longer enslaved by our own minds. Overthinking is the enemy of peace. It steals your sleep, drains your energy, and convinces you that safety lies in waiting just a little longer before you begin. But that safety is an illusion. The only real security comes from knowing you can face whatever comes. Not because you have thought through every possibility, but because you have trained yourself to adapt, to respond, to keep moving forward no matter what. When you stop treating your thoughts as commands and start treating them as suggestions. When you learn to cut through mental noise with the simple question of what you can control right now. When you find the courage to act despite uncertainty, you tap into a strength that overthinking can never access. You become the kind of man Marcus Aurelius described. The man who stands calm in the storm not because the storm has stopped, but because he has learned to be unmoved by forces outside his control. This is not weakness. This is power, and it has been waiting for you all along on the other side of thought, in the space where action begins.